Good morning, Seacrest Village, and welcome to Hi There with Rabbi Leah. Another Tuesday morning. I hope you guys are all well. I didn't talk to you after Shabbat, so I hope you had a wonderful weekend. And we finished last week our study of the various Jewish movements, taking us all the way from biblical times up until post-Enlightenment and 20th century and then 21st century Jewish movements. And very often, I think we have a tendency to focus on the big holidays, the big parts of history and so on. And so my hope is to bring you some information and do some study around things that you have probably heard about, but may be interested in learning a little bit more. And so I have a topic that I'd like to talk about for the next couple sessions of Hi There. And it may be something you're very familiar with and something that you're not. So here we go. I hope you enjoy. What I want to talk about is a holiday that happens once a month. And we don't necessarily, in the progressive Jewish movements, spend a significant amount of time on it, and yet it is considered to be extremely important within the Jewish calendar. And that monthly holiday is known as Rosh Chodesh. Now, you all know the word Rosh. The word Rosh means head, just like Rosh Hashanah means head of the year. Rosh Chodesh, the word Chodesh means month, and Rosh Chodesh means the head of the month or the new month. And it is extremely significant in Jewish practice, in Jewish law, and Jewish ritual, for a variety of reasons, which I hope to elucidate during these next couple sessions. We have generally 12 Rashi Chodashot, which would be the plural, during the year. However, we do have an occasional leap month during the year, which would give us an additional Rosh Chodesh, an additional beginning of the month. And in a society, particularly in ancient Israel, where where agriculture is so incredibly significant, and the community, the entire society, was agrarian in nature and relied upon everything that had to do with nature. Sorry about that. My phone decided to ring. Let me turn that off. In an agrarian society where so much depends upon meteorological and astronomical events, Rosh Chodesh took on a very important meaning. So the first thing that you should know about Rosh Chodesh is that it is established in the Torah. So this is not and something that was made up by the rabbis. This was actually something that appears in the Torah, and with very specific parts of the Torah that are read on Rosh Chodesh. And in the book of Exodus, we actually get the verses that talk about not only establishing the new moon, the new month, but the beginning of the new year, what the first month of the year is. And we read in Exodus there where it says that God spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, "This month shall mark for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first of the months of the year for you." And what month was God referring to when he gave this commandment to Aaron and to Moses? Well, although most of you may think that that first month is the month of Tishrei, the month in which Rosh Hashanah occurs, that is not correct. the first month of the year is the month of Nisan, which is the month in which Passover falls. So that is actually the very first of the Hebrew months. And each of the Hebrew months, we celebrate the first of that month with special rituals, with special prayers, and so on and so forth, because it marked the new moon, which was the beginning of not only a new phase, but had agricultural significance as well. So Rosh Chodesh, like all Jewish holidays and celebrations, starts the evening before the day. And Rosh Chodesh is the day after a new moon. So, and it begins at 6 o'clock p.m. Jerusalem time. The times are astronomically determined for the new moons, and so accurate are they that we can actually calculate them back about 10,000 years, and we would know exactly which days those new moons fell. Now I'm talking about new moons falling in our secular calendar. We could say that there was a new moon on September 16th of the year, 5,881 BCE. So that's how accurate the new moons are. And how do you know when it's a new moon? Well, those of us who live in the 21st century would simply look up in the sky, and we would see that there is pitch dark, or maybe a very tiny sliver of a moon, and that would be a new moon. And one can always tell the beginning of a new Hebrew month because that's what the moon looks like. A tiny little sliver, or maybe no moon at all. Hebrew months are lunar months, not solar months like we use in our own solar calendar. So each month is either 28 or 29 days, depending upon the month. And in ancient times, somebody had to look up in the sky to see the moon. It had to be verified by a couple of witnesses who corroborated that it was indeed a Rosh Chodesh, a new moon. And then one was able to proceed with what had to be done when a new moon was identified. Okay, so witnesses would see the new moon, they would corroborate what they were seeing, and then that existence of the new moon would be confirmed through testimony by these witnesses, and then the Sanhedrin would declare that it was Rosh Chodesh for either a full month or what they called a defective 29 months. So 28 days was the norm. And this was a statute and a law in ancient Israel. And in one of the Psalms, Psalm 81, we read, "Blow the trumpet at the time of the new moon, at the full moon, on our solemn feast day. For this is a statute of Israel, a law of the God of Jacob." So the full moon was recognized. The new moon, the Rosh Chodesh, was recognized by trumpet blasts. Now, they didn't have brass trumpets, so what are we talking about? We're actually talking about the blowing of the shofar. And the shofar was blown in Jerusalem. The sound would waft its way to a nearby encampment or village or town where somebody would blow the shofar again, and then this would be a successive series of blowing the shofar until it had been made aware to the entire land of Israel that it was a new moon. So we know that this played an important part of ritual in ancient Israel. So important, in fact, that when the new moon falls, there is a particular Torah reading that's done to mark the new moon. We go back to a specific part of the Torah that talks about Rosh Chodesh, and that's what we read on that day. The Shabbat before a new moon is called Shabbat Meverachim. And so if this past Shabbat had preceded the coming of a new moon, that Shabbat would have been called Shabbat Meverachim. There would have been special prayers that would have been done. And a Shabbat that actually falls on Rosh Chodesh, on the first of the month with the new moon, is called Shabbat HaChodesh. So in addition to certain prayers that are done, it is it is mandated that one also do Hallel. And Hallel is the series of Psalms from the book of Psalms, Psalm 113 through 118, that are sung and chanted on the festivals as well as on Rosh Chodesh. So we chant Hallel on Pesach, Sukkot, on Simchat Torah, and on all the new moons throughout the year. Now we don't chant the Hallel on the first of Tishrei. The first of Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah. And the reason is that it is already a celebratory day, and so we don't need these additional psalms in order to create that celebration for the first of the for the birthday of the world, because that is exactly what Rosh Hashanah is. It is the beginning of a month, but it's also considered to be the birthday of creation. More about that as we get into the High Holy Days. So even though nowadays we all have a calendar, and most of us have a Jewish calendar, and we can look on that calendar and it will say Rosh Chodesh Av or Rosh Chodesh Tevet, so that we know that it is the new month of whatever that month might be. It is still announced in the synagogue, and usually that's done after the Torah is read. Traditionally, as I said, we read Psalms 113 through 118, but most months only part of each of those Psalms are read. However, on Rosh Chodesh Tevet, which is the month in which Hanukkah falls, the full Hallel is recited. So the entirety of all of those Psalms. There's a section in the book of Numbers that's read that talks about which are the specific offerings that were made in the temple during Rosh Chodesh. And then there's an additional service, the Musaf service, to commemorate the original sacrifices that were made in the temple. So there are also some inclusions in the grace after meals and so on and so forth. If Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbat, the regular Torah reading is supplemented with the reading from Numbers. And so you need 2 Torah scrolls at least, because you may be reading from Genesis or you may be reading from Deuteronomy, and it's a little cumbersome to have to roll that scroll back to Numbers in order to read the specific verses from Numbers. So you want to have at least 2 Torah scrolls on a Shabbat if Rosh Chodesh falls on that Shabbat. So if the Hebrew month is based upon a lunar calendar, which is 4 weeks or 28 days, why is it that sometimes a Hebrew month is 29 days? Well, the reason is that a custom developed in which an additional day could be added to the month in order to ensure that certain holidays, for example, Yom Kippur, did not fall on the day before or the day after Shabbat. So if Yom Kippur fell on a Friday, how would you prepare for Shabbat if you were fasting all day? You couldn't do it the next day. And once it's sundown, you're breaking the fast, and then it's Shabbat. Similarly, if Yom Kippur fell on a Sunday, it means that you would be fasting all day on Saturday for Yom Kippur, breaking the fast Saturday night, and then immediately, I guess it had to do in more recent years with working on Sundays, because, Sunday is a work day in the land of Israel, Sunday through usually Thursday, sometimes Friday morning. So there was a little bit of fudging that was permitted so that certain holidays would not end up falling on the Shabbat. And that's why sometimes we have a 29th day added. Now, Rosh Chodesh has a very special meaning for women. And according to the Talmud, women are forbidden to engage in work on Rosh Chodesh. Rashi commented on this passage in the Talmud, and he says that the activities from which a woman must refrain are the following: spinning, weaving, and sewing. Those are the skills that the women contributed to the building of the Mishkan, the building of the tabernacle. So why this prohibition? Well, we learn about it in Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer, which is not an interpretation, but a commentary on the book of Pirkei Avot. And here's what it says. Aaron argued with himself, saying, "If I say to Israel, 'Give to me gold and silver,' they will bring it immediately. But behold, I will say to them, 'Give to me the earrings of your wives and of your sons,' and therefore the matter will fail." So what is Aaron referring to? Well, Aaron is referring to the pressure that is being brought to bear on him to build the golden calf. Moses has gone up to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah from God, leaving Aaron with the Israelites. And although he's going to be gone 30 days and 30 nights, the Israelites begin to get very antsy. They are on spilkies. They are sure that this guy is not going to return and don't know what he's been telling them about this supposed God of the Hebrews. And so they begin to pressure Aaron to build them this golden calf that they can worship. The Midrash tells us that Aaron begins to have this internal dialogue about what he should do. Should he tell them, "Bring me your stuff right away. Bring me the gold from the earrings on your wives' ears, and bring me the gold that your children have"? So Aaron believes that he has two different options. One is to tell the men or the people of Israel, "Bring me your stuff right away." And if they do that, he is then going to have to immediately create this golden calf for them. So what he does is he puts a little hitch into the instruction, and he tells the men, "Give me the earrings of your wives and your sons," and knows that the women and the boys are not going to be so quick to give up the goods, and it's going to take a little more convincing on the part of the men to get their wives and their sons to turn over the goods. And so Aaron figures he's got a little wiggle room here. And he thinks if he uses this second option, asking the men to go back and talk to their wives and sons, that it is going to fail. So the way the Midrash continues, the women heard this, but they were unwilling to give their earrings to their husbands. But they said to them, "You desire to make a graven image of a molten image with a graven image of a molten image without any power in it to deliver." So in other words, they're saying, "Are you Meshuggah, guys? You want to take my earrings to do what? You're going to melt it down and make a graven image and this molten image? We were told not to do that." Yet, the Holy One, blessed be He, gave the women their reward in this world and the world to come. And what reward did God give them in this world? That they should observe the new moons more stringently than the men. Meaning that for the women, it was considered to be like a Shabbat, with certain tasks that they were allowed not to have to do because of this wonderful thing they did in not giving up their jewelry to their husbands to build a golden calf. So that was their reward in this world. And what did he give them in the world to come? They are destined to be renewed like the new moons, as it is said, "Who satisfieth thy years with good things, so that thy youth is renewed like the eagle," which seems to imply that even if a woman died at an old age, that her youth would be renewed to her in the world to come, meaning that she would regain her vigor and her girlish looks, and that would be the reward for not participating in the sin of the golden calf. So Rosh Chodesh is very female oriented, and observances will vary from group to group, but many are centered on small gatherings of women who have Rosh Chodesh groups, and often there's a particular interest in the study of Kabbalah, and also conversations around and the studying of the Shekhinah, which is considered by Kabbalah to be the feminine aspect of God. So these groups, these Rosh Chodesh groups, and I was in one when I was in rabbinical school, and I led one for girls in 7th through 10th grade called Rosh Chodesh. It's a girl's thing. It's a girl thing. So they engage in a wide variety of activities that center around issues important to women, depending upon the preference of the group's members. So many Rosh Chodesh groups will explore spirituality, religious education, ritual, health issues, music, chanting, art, cooking. Some groups also choose to educate young Jewish women in their community about sexuality, self-image, and other women's mental and physical health issues. So there is this tradition or this custom of women gathering together in groups known as Rosh Chodesh groups, in which they can address women's issues, because now that they're not spinning, sewing, and weaving, they have all this time available to get together and just kibitz, even though they've got 13 children at home who are fending for themselves on that day. No, just kidding. Anyway, Miriam's cup. You may have been to a Seder, a Passover Seder, where there is a cup like an Elijah's cup, but it is a cup for Miriam, and that actually originated in the 1980s out of a Boston Rosh Chodesh group, invented by a woman by the name of Stephanie Liu, who filled it with mayim chayim, which are living waters, and used it originally in a feminist ceremony and a guided meditation. And as I mentioned, some seders, including the original women's seders, but not limited to women-only seders nowadays, will set a cup, a kos Miriam, a Miriam's cup, filled with water, next to Elijah's cup on the Pesach table. And sometimes there will be a ritual to honor Miriam, because Miriam was the prophetess who was responsible for the springing up of wells throughout the journey of the Israelites, so that they had miraculous water during their 40 years in the desert as they left Egypt. So there are a lot of wonderful rituals associated with Rosh Chodesh. But as I mentioned, it does originate in the Torah. And there's another Rosh Chodesh story, other than the one about the women not giving up their jewelry for the making of the golden calf. And it's a story that when the Israelites were in the wilderness, they gave their most beautiful materials for the making of the Mishkan. There's a Torah portion called Truma, where Moses says to the people, bring me gifts, bring gifts of every kind, and then goes on to make a list of the different semi-precious stones and the fabrics and the gold and the silver, until the people gave so much that eventually he had to say, Dayenu, that's enough already. We've got enough to make this tabernacle. And according to this one story, this midrash, women donated more than the men. The Torah says that the men gathered upon the women, implying that the women were more quick to come with their gifts. So they were willing to give of their beautiful stuff for the making of the Mishkan. They were very generous in their weaving and their spinning and their sewing. And so, as a result, they are granted the day off on Rosh Chodesh from those activities, because they did double duty when they were asked to bring these things. They were incredibly generous. And in this story, again, the women are the most enthusiastic givers to the tabernacle. And this kind of enthusiastic, generous giving represents the indwelling of the divine presence. So when somebody is generous and gives and does so without kvetching about it, it's because they have a neshama. They have God's presence within them. And that foreshadows women's association with the Shekhinah, this female embodiment of the divinity, which is fairly well known in Kabbalah as well as in Jewish culture in general. Now, there's also a third story explaining the connection between women and the new moon, and perhaps it's the most telling because it says, I don't have time to tell you right now, so you're going to have to wait till Thursday. So on Thursday, I'll just do a little review. I'm going to share the other story about how Rosh Chodesh became a women's holiday. And then it's from the Babylonian Talmud. And then we will go on to talk about Rosh Chodesh through history and three important months that are coming up. We have Rosh Chodesh Av, Rosh Chodesh Elul, and Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. So I want to talk a little bit about each of those, because coming up August, end of July, August, September. We have 3 very, very important Hebrew months. So I'm going to sign off now from Hi there. I will see you around the campus, and I'll see you on video on Thursday. Lehitraot. Bye-bye.